And then on the flip side, there's someone like Miley Cyrus who came up through that same atmosphere, but she was the star of Hannah Montana, and her dad was also a star and a producer on it. So there is that built-in safety net that she had that other young Disney stars didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
That's the takeaway from this conversation. Trust Billy Ray Cyrus. Yes.
Yes.
Welcome to Keep It, Crooked Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III. I'm a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Fertel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
And I'm Aida Osman. I'm a TV writer and alleged comedian.
Let's get into it.
Last Friday, after a week in the hospital, beloved rapper Earl Simmons, a.k.a. DMX, passed away at the age of 50. He was the first artist to debut an album at number 1 5 times in a row.
That seems so insane.
Insane. It's ridiculous.
Not easy to get. Not everybody has that.
Truly.
In light of his public lifelong substance abuse issues and documentaries focusing on the addiction and mental health issues of singers like Demi Lovato and Britney Spears, it seems that we as a society are sort of reframing the way we discuss celebrities who struggle with addiction now.
No, think of the word crack. Who do you associate it with? Whitney Houston. Because I think about this specifically around that time, like late 90s, Whitney, I guess going into the early 90s. And it's sort of like, I think people think of celebrities as indulgent, period. Like it's indulgent that they want attention. It's indulgent that they're always, performing in front of us. And so they sort of glibly stamp something like addiction as another form of just the zany way celebrities live with no actual consideration of the reality behind it. Even a couple weeks ago on this podcast, I made a joke glibly about Janis Joplin. It's like, right, a part of me still thinks like the excess of being a rocker is still some glam thing detached from the reality of hardcore addiction, which obviously killed her. So there's a callousness about how we think of celebrities in relation to drug addiction. And by the way, that's apart from our misunderstanding of the life of a drug addict, period, which is also, a weak understanding.
Not even just drug addiction, too, but it's like, I think that's how our relationship with celebrities in general. You will see that from the way that people sort of discuss celebrities' relationships online, or will sort of just be awful to them, or, when you look at gossip sites, right? And it's things where people talk about which celebrity is nice and which one isn't.
Right.
And that's usually based on which celebrity they were able to interrupt a dinner that they were having, force them to take a photo or get an autograph. And if that person put up with it in a nice way, oh, it was such a nice celebrity. And if the celebrity is like, can you leave me alone? That person's an asshole, know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it's just this sort of idea that because they are famous, we could sort of like treat them however we want. And everything that they do is like serving at the pleasure of us. In a way, which
and the thing you're talking about, where someone is reporting on somebody else's behavior, the shield they get is no one is criticizing their behavior. Like we don't know who this person is who's giving us the tea, and so there's no risk for them. Yeah,
and it just brings you to a fact of like, we get so much from the celebrities. The reason why many people are celebrities, and I'm talking about real ones, they give us entertainment in films, like you connect to an emotional performance. Music, you connect to it. The joy that you would get from Whitney, the way that like her music still moves us to this day. It's wild that you could have that emotional connection to an artist and then in the same breath, like make jokes about her being a crack addict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do both at the same time. Like we create this distance and also an obsession with them. And we were just talking 2 weeks ago about the Tina Turner documentary and how quickly after the abuse with Ike, she became the focal point of so many crack lyrics and domestic abuse lyrics. Like it's something that we do. And we oftentimes think that like these people are deserving of their abuse because of their fame, or we can ignore the abuse because of the fame that they have. Like at least they have this life of luxury. They can deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Weirdly, from Sage Prophet Azealia Banks, she had a Instagram video where she discussed DMX after his passing, and she really hit on some good points, actually, just about the idea of celebrities dealing with mental health issues and the fact that the people in charge of them, like labels and managers and things, like really have no incentive to help these people, you know, unless they actually care about them as a person, like they're a friend or something, because it's really just sort of about the bottom line. And, you know, she talked about how a celebrity like DMX, you know, could like go through money issues. And we know, how many artists do we know have gone through money issues because of people at the top sort of like skimming or just sort of like taking advantage of people. You know, we've seen it with TLC and Pebbles. You know,
watch that behind the music if you haven't. I'm sure it's on YouTube.
Seen it with Rihanna and her accountant.
Yeah,
Bitch better have
was
my
about
money.
to say Rihanna. You
Period.
know, that's where bitch better have my money came from. You know, from the fact that like she had money stolen from her, and on the flip side, we're just seeing like Rihanna's releasing a new fucking album like every year. Why is she constantly releasing all this damn music? Chill out, girl. And it's because like she was in this contract and like wasn't getting all that money, you know, and it's that reverse. And Azealia was just making a point of artists, you know, who a lot of times don't control their masters and aren't getting as much money from their art as you think they are and are enriching other people. When you say things like, this person is dealing with addiction, this person has some mental health issues, and they should go get some help. She pointed out that whenever people would be like, why didn't Azealia go get some help? Why didn't she get a therapist? She was like, bitch, I couldn't afford to. You know, and she just pointed out that now she feels a lot better because she is in therapy and she can afford it because she's finally starting to see money from like her debut
NFT
album.
sex tapes. Oh, okay, that too. Also, Homegirl's making a lot of money from audio sex tapes. Let's go.
Yes. Plus, we know she stole something out of Elon's house and sold it for some Bitcoin.
Probably like a dinosaur tooth.
Yeah.
Just had lying around in like his silverware.
She stole
drawer.
Denver, the last dinosaur. That's who Elon had in his house.
I have to say about DMX, I was actually surprised by the appreciation of him as a lyricist. I mean, I just think of him as somebody who arrived in that block of kind of pop star-sized rappers in like the late 90s. You know, obviously, rap had been extremely mainstream, extremely popular. But I feel like around that time, like around the Eminem birth and stuff, that's when rappers started to emerge the same way someone like Britney Spears would emerge, you know, just like somebody who took over the charts and there are posters on our wall and they exist right alongside them on TRL or whatever. And I was like ignorant about the fact that he was such a specific and kind of rad lyricist. I also was unaware of his homophobic lyrics, but I felt like we should have taken a breath after his death before we re-explored those.
Yeah, that is. Let me address both of these. The first one, I see a lot of people referring to him, you know, sort of as like a preacher, and I definitely sort of feel that sense in that I commented after his death that I used to constantly return to DMX songs as a kid, and it didn't really click to me, but now it sort of does. He was a person who like talked about pain and suffering, but not in a sort of like I'm over it sort of like way that like a lot of people could like in the 90s, you know, like a Kurt Cobain or something like that, or even like a Fiona, you know, like, and that obviously Fiona is someone who, you know, dealt with a lot of, you know, like sexualization like as a woman in the industry, but there's sort of that pervasive music era, particularly that white people were able to engage in like alternative music spaces where it's like, I'm over it and the world sucks, you know? And DMX gave a lot of like, the world sucks, but like I'm surviving it and finding that joy in the suffering. And I found a lot of his music is just like really positive, you know? And it's sort of talking about like why want death when I could want, you know, like life and happiness. And I think when you go and look back at a lot of DMX lyrics, a lot of them are very hopeful and inspirational. Second to what you were saying, that is also an annoying tendency that gay people do, white gay people, when it comes to, you know, like artists like that. It's like the man died and now we have to be like, oh, look at these homophobic lyrics. And it's like, okay, well, a lot of you stan people who had homophobic leadings like years ago too, you know? It's like there should be an understanding of like the environments that people are raised in, and also like wondering like what sort of harm they're also causing to queer people as well too, you know? Like homophobic lyrics in DMX songs from the early 2000s, late 90s is something that was prevalent in hip-hop then, but it's also something that we're slowly moving past, but it's also something where it's like it was contributing to a sort of culture, but it wasn't a thing that was, you know, like passing legislation. You know, it's like the people who are passing like anti-trans bills across America right now didn't get that from listening to Party Up.
I do think there's I'm all for exploring homophobic lyrics and where they come from and who they're supposed to appeal to and who they're supposed to alienate. Completely down for that. It's just interesting in a conversation about somebody who has just died tragically and who did have a positive impact otherwise. It's almost like, for me personally, I don't know how I should compartmentalize it. Like just take the moment to, learn about his vast and not just his popular stuff. Look into this person, but then also reserve a special moment for that too, and realize like, all right, he wrote homophobic stuff too.
Yeah, and that also happened to me on the other side, being that like people were reminding me immediately when I would talk about mourning DMX, people were reminding me of his domestic abuse allegations, which is something that comes up damn near immediately after. And I would also bring up the addiction, and I'm, as a fan, trying to reconcile the fact that, yes, this person did abuse someone, but was also dealing with addiction quite openly and was wearing that trauma and his pain in his lyrics of his songs. So it was very candid in a way about the things that he was going through. And, you know, what is the role of the audience member to be able to like sift through all those emotions, especially while you're dealing with the grief of losing an artist you like a lot. So, you know, it can all get very muddied.
There's also when he was on the VH1 show Couples Therapy, discussing his relationship problems, with his estranged wife, who, they reconciled to raise their kids. The four that they have together, and she was by his side when he died. But during that show, it was harrowing, when he talked about the abuse that he suffered from his mother, how she used to tell him she never loved him, how she used to wake him up in the middle of the night, whipping him with extension cords, it's like understanding the abuse that someone goes through that creates cycles of abuse. And those are the conversations that we should be having, particularly with artists, because the people who go into the arts are usually damaged and abused people who are finding some way to make sense of it. And their attempts to make sense of it often help us make sense of the things that we're going through. So I find it shameful, for people to get so much from artists that, help them deal with their own mental health struggles and their own emotional issues, and then turn around and treat those people like cattle or treat them like shit in the aftermath of their deaths.
I wonder if we'll ever have a definitive conversation about how VH1 exploited mental illness, specifically in the 2000s. Now, obviously, there are lots of docudramas, Intervention, I guess, would be in the upper tier, like the Yale of these shows or whatever. But VH1, I remember watching Jeff Conaway from Grease on one of those shows, and I thought to myself, I'm watching somebody dying. This is, wow. and it's part of just an ensemble of people, quote unquote, getting through something, but in fact just being filmed. It didn't feel like any care was being taken. It was their celebrity was being exploited, and thus all of their problems were being exploited. Like they had nowhere else to turn. What a weird and strange era in reality TV. And I probably watched too much of it. So.
And it shaped me dearly. So I was thinking about the way that art, musicians have been alchemizing their pain for entertainment as opposed to comedians. Because recently we heard information about John Mulaney going to rehab, who he'd spoken very, very openly about his alcohol addiction and drug misuse when he was younger, and then had been sober for a long time and was providing all this entertainment, and like, he seemed to be the funniest, calmest, most stable guy until all of a sudden
I just want to hug him.
What don't we all? But it also made me think about people like Richard Pryor and Craig Ferguson and Maria Bamford and Jane Lynch, and these people who have used their mental illness and their addiction to be the thing that propels them through their career in a way that it is the overarching umbrella. It's like what ties all of their art together. And I think Demi Lovato, who we're about to talk to, is a perfect example of this, like this new subsect of celebrities and artists who a lot of their career is defined by their addiction. I don't know if you guys saw Allison Stoner going on an Instagram campaign talking about how we need to start having conversations about childhood stars and the trauma that they've endured. I don't know if you saw that. But it is reminding me a lot that Demi Lovato, again, has been famous since she was, 4?
Totally.
On
right.
Barney.
Yes.
And it's reminding me the lack of depth you are able to create when you have been, a star for the majority of your life.
It's like it must be incredibly hard to face addiction coming from that perspective, because there's no alternative life that or can reach for. It's you're getting better so that you can get back into the thing that created the trauma in the first place.
And excuse me, by lack of depth, I actually mean like the amount of exploitative people around you and the inability to like become your own human, because you're forced to be all these other humans for all these different people. So
yeah,
I routinely see people who become famous like in their 30s say feeling grateful it happened then.
So grateful.
Because they at least have some sort of foundation of normalcy or priorities outside of fame, which are priorities outside of success and like an entertainment-based business, etc. And it's almost like, God, I like, you can't empathize with someone like Demi Lovato in that way. Like, I don't know how that shapes you and changes you and, refigures your life.
And then on the flip side, there's someone like Miley Cyrus who came up through that same atmosphere, but she was the star of Hannah Montana, and her dad was also a star and a producer on it. So there is that built-in safety net that she had that other young Disney stars didn't have.
The ability to navigate this industry that Billy Ray had, that who knows.
That's the takeaway from this conversation. Trust Billy Ray Cyrus. Yes.
Yes. I mean, helping Lil Nas X go to his #1 too.
That's true.
Oh,
That's true.
yeah, lest we not forget.